This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the town of North Haven.
I'd like to call our December 19th Board of Finance meeting to order. We are missing one member tonight. First item, minutes of our regular meeting, November 14th. Everyone's had a chance to look at it, review it. Any questions or comments? Got a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I will make that.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Nothing really on old business. Budget reports, expenditures.
Give me a second.
Expenditure and revenues. I know there's a few
I
questions. on
have
revenue.
the revenue,
Yes.
detailed revenue, page 2. A couple of things here. I just want to clarify. The Quinnipiac College, any idea when that's going to happen?
So the way it works, Jim, is every spring I meet with the president of Quinnipiac and the management, and we develop a pilot formula. That's a byproduct of what the state pilot program is. So in other words, if the state pilot program grows, we'll get a larger percentage from Quinnipiac because the formula years ago that we worked out with Dr. Leahy was based on a percentage of what we get from the state. So when we see or project what the state will give us, then in the spring we'll finalize that. And I have a commitment from Quinnipiac University that there will definitely be another pilot program this year.
So that formula is in effect even with the new president of Quinnipiac?
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
formula?
Yeah, so I've met with Judy Olean many times. I actually had dinner with her and her husband. And we are continuing the same relationship we've had with Dr. Leahy in terms of this type of format. The town will be receiving another voluntary payment from the university.
Great. Okay, and also on the same page, halfway down under the town revenue departments, paramedic services. We're really light there. Is that, explain to me, is this the billing that we're supposedly doing when we take somebody to the hospital?
This is the billing service that's a byproduct of Scott Martis's area right now. And there's some outstanding cash, outstanding invoices that have not been collected. So we're looking to hire a collection agency. Ed and I are working this out to get the balance of what is owed.
Okay.
So it could be, is it 100,000, Ed, we're looking at maybe
I
outstanding
think it's more
collectibles?
than that, but I can only
More
report
than-
what's received.
Looks like almost 150
Right.
based on what
Yeah,
we're
if not.
budgeted, but.
So what we see in the report to that point is what's received. There's a large balance out there, 100 to 150, that the fire chief has recommended we look at an outside collection agency, which we are doing, so.
And the one line item above it, the fire fees, is that when we go around and do inspections?
That's for plan reviews, Jim, that the fire department has been doing for years. So if there's a new expanded business, let's say, or let's say there's a current business expanding or a new business coming in, they have to do plan reviews. A large part of that is from that. Ed, any comments on that?
No, that's exactly what it is, Mike. Just,
Now, we use outside,
we use an outside contractor, and you'll see that in the expenditure budget and
Yeah.
how much we spent for him.
Right.
And that offsets what we collect for the fire fees.
Does it? Okay, thanks.
So we are, as a result of that, there's many municipalities that are talking to us and asking us how we've done it because they want to adopt the model. Because with the uncertainty at the state level, ladies and gentlemen, many municipalities are looking to see how there can be incremental streams of revenue, whether those streams are through these voluntary pilot payments with the universities or whether it be through this. We actually had a meeting with one city that came in, and we shared with them what we're doing, and they're going to try to adopt it in their form of government. So,
That's good.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On revenue, page 2, top entry, sale of town property.
Yes.
Is that where the police vehicles would go if they're auctioned off? Or what is this sale that,
This happens to be a lot of old equipment that was sitting around the Public Works garage that we auctioned off just to get rid of because it was just taking up space. And
Oh,
they
yes.
used whatever parts they needed, but anything that was salvageable, they got rid of.
so if you auction off cars, where does this revenue go? To the police department?
That would go here.
Right there?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
everything has to clear through.
Okay,
Nothing goes direct off the.
But sometimes if they're trade-ins, that would just, there'd be nothing to exchange.
sure. And can we go back to expenses?
Sure.
We just rushed through so quickly. Page 7, the consultant software. What is that? Purpose of consultant software?
In information technology?
Yes, page 7, information technology, consultant software.
$75,000 line.
I know he just bought something large.
For 45,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you just not change an operating system? Did we change our operating system?
We did something.
You approve?
No, what happened, after we realized people were being held up by ransomware, I think I sat down with the IT director and we went through a lot of different things to make sure everything was upgraded. Patches were taken care of and anything that needed to be cleared up, I wanted cleared up, just so I didn't have any issues.
So the 45,000 again is for what? The upgrades?
Yeah, some catch-up, some patches,
Okay,
various items.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, since Pat is on expenses, I actually had two myself. I guess just a note, I mean, the fire department's running...
Which page?
I'm sorry, page 11. The fire department's running over. They're 7+% over budget. So I don't know if there's a way to communicate, Ed, to the fire department or to the chief to please pay attention to it, and maybe next month we'll see they're a little bit more back in line, but he's $330,000 over budget, from what I can tell here.
Projected at the end of the year, or?
Just where he is
Yeah.
year-to-date, Mike, I mean,
Yeah.
he should be, you know, just on a pro rata basis. I know not everything is linear, but
Yeah.
you got a lot of line items here that are well over expended here, you know, given where we are in this point in the year. I mean, let's look at the equipment. I mean, he's $71,000 over. So I don't know, Ed, if that's something you could just convey to him that...
I will, I'll talk to you.
And then my only other question, Ed, is if you go all the way to the, seconds in the back somewhere here.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to ask about.
The last page, page 18, Ed,
Yep.
the breathing apparatus, is that, I don't recall that being on last month. Is that a new entry? What is that?
Is that the Defco Park incident?
Well, it'd be too early for that, right?
No, what happened was, he's right,
Oh,
it was the
the
Defco
SCBA.
Park fire, but as a result of that, a lot of the equipment was ruined. So they had to get equipment right away just so they could have it on hand if there was a fire or anything. So that had to go through this line, and it'll either be covered by insurance.
Wasn't that fire
contingency-
just the other night?
No.
No.
No, back in November.
2 weeks.
Oh, that was, okay.
Couple weeks ago.
So-
Isn't that line item of 71,000 part of this apparatus? When I seen that, on page 11, when I seen that 71,000, it's under fire equipment, I pictured that being part of the new equipment we just purchased.
Yes, there was some that went through that line and some that went through the capital. We had a line for
Okay.
breathing apparatus, so I put that there.
Okay.
All right, so this is replacement of the turnout gear for the most part.
Right, and other equipment,
Right.
it's much higher than that, but.
Yeah, so let me just comment on
Yeah.
that. This is going to end up to be at least a $600,000 expense. So when the chief called us, we immediately said, get it done. We can't have firefighters without this apparatus. Gear, air packs, whatever else was involved, there was a lot involved. So Ed and I are working on the reimbursement side. So you're going to see these over expenditures on the line items. with hopefully a trailing level of reimbursement with the areas that we're trying to get reimbursed from, so.
Thank you.
I have one more question on page 11, under fire. The consultant entry of 40,000, 41,000, what is that? We didn't budget for this. What is this for?
The person that does the reviews. of
That's the fire,
plans.
does the fire inspections, an outside consultant. You'll see the fire fees, he does
Yes.
the work for the fire fees, to generate the fire fees.
So his cost or his revenue is here in this revenue report,
Yes.
or expenditure? I
It's
mean.
in the fire department's
Expenditure.
expense
Yeah,
lines,
okay.
is on revenue under the fire. A lot of that, inspections and such are not done by, you know, technically our personnel. They subcontract
Right.
with retired fire officials to do the inspections.
So we'll be able to budget a figure for this coming year?
No, we haven't budgeted the figure for that since he started,
Yeah.
actually, for the last 2 or 3 years.
Why did we not, I don't see an entry here.
No, we haven't put it in the budget.
Oh,
So Pat, the reason for that is his compensation is generated by the volume of activity that he's involved with. So what we did a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, we established a line item on the revenue and a line item on the expenses, and even though they're in different spots, that's where we link the two together. But one thing I can guarantee, the revenue is always going to far exceed the expenses with his compensation.
Whatever happens to come up that year that
yeah,
he's required to be
Right.
called in for.
okay.
Pat, if you look at the special funds report, you'll see it summarized there.
Okay. Thank you.
Special funds? And Board of Education.
It's good to get a report out of the Board of Ed while they're going through their transition. We're not going to really critique it that
Yeah, I mean,
that
there's not-
specifically until
there's
they
not
have
looking-
established some new management there.
We can gain from it. Can I have a motion to accept, and if there's no other comments, can I have a motion to accept the reports as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
I have an associated question with that.
Sure.
For selectmen, I just want to know, with any other new businesses coming to town, such as the freight company, will they be taking advantage of the assessment deferral program?
Any new business, Michael, is eligible for that. As you'll recall, there's 3 different levels on that assessment deferral based on the construction value of the project. So, yes, the answer is yes.
Well, it's nice to know that that program may have entered into their decision-making when they decided on North Haven.
It's one of the main reasons why.
Yeah, it's a good tool to have.
Pat, a question for you. You seem to fall in love with that board. Would you like to stay on the?
Yes, I'm volunteering. I think we've accomplished a lot since I've been
Yeah.
on the board.
Yes.
Not all due to me, but we have 4 pieces of property, which is good.
Well, I'll make a motion that Pat Brown be the Board of Finance representative on the Open Space Advisory Committee.
Can I second it?
Yes, you can. Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to just say Pat's done an outstanding job working with that Open Space Commission, working with Lynn Sadowski. So thank you, Pat, for your time on that, and delighted that you would like to continue.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous again.
Do I vote on myself?
Always welcome.
You can.
Before we go to public comment, any questions or comments from board members?
Sir, I'd like a moment to mention and address the report that we issued last month from the study group that was commissioned by our board. The the report from the North Haven Fire and Medical Services Workshop Group, the report from Chairman Monaco and I was sparked by a request from the fire department originally to increase their manpower by 50%. That being a very large request, this board decided after a motion by the first selectman that there was a reason and a cause to study the needs of the fire and medical services and the problems that they faced, and to come up with some recommendations that were cost-effective to solve some of the problems. And in so doing, we put together a purpose for that workshop group. We wanted to make sure it was clear, and that purpose was to gather information, evaluate procedures and policies, and develop recommendations concerning resource allocation and other issues affecting the town of North Haven's fire and medical services. So throughout those 7 meetings and 21 hours of study, including reviewing over 200 pages of documents and statistics, we studied the problem with the Finance Director Ed Swinkowski, Chief Januszewski, and Deputy Chief Marcus. We met with the dispatch operations in one of our meetings. We met with the volunteer captains in another one of our meetings, and we conducted outside research with the State Office of Emergency Management and with other professionals in the area. Now, I'm satisfied that we completed the assignment thoroughly and in accordance with our purpose. Our 30 recommendations are divided into 7 areas of focus. Our summary of findings illustrate our rationale that is the basis for our recommendations and conclusions. While being cost-conscious, we understand that some of our proposals come with a significant price tag. Most of our advice was associated with items of no cost. However, the aggregate estimated cost of all the recommendations, if implemented, may be as high as $2 million. Now, the Fire Commission, in its written response, actually agreed with or did not comment on about 75% of what's in our report. 75% of the report they either agreed with or had no objection to. Now, we'll discuss a lot of what's in there when we have the fire workshop on January 19th. But tonight, it's nice to know that the Board of Finance is starting to look to act on some of these recommendations, and we'll consider the options to rectify our personnel and equipment issues tonight in the meetings to come. So I want to thank again the Chairman Monaco for his leadership and advice throughout this assignment, and I think we fulfilled this assignment in accordance with the purpose that was set forth to us.
Thank you, Michael. As was stated at our last Board of Finance meeting, our suggestions were passed to the Board of Finance. It's their jurisdiction, and they're the policy makers for that implementation of any changes that happen. Hopefully, it'll take some of our suggestions, and apparently they have taken some of our suggestions to heart. Hopefully, they'll see the validity in some of the other ones that they're maybe not completely in tune with. But as the workshop develops, I'm sure there'll be additional conversations. If the first selectman like to mention, there was some of it implemented with
Yes.
additional personnel.
So just kind of to reiterate what Michael and Richard said, the subcommittee of the Board of Finance submitted their recommendations. Those recommendations went to the Fire Commission, and the Fire Commission came back and gave us their recommendations. So here's where we're at, and I want to be very clear on this. There's no need for long narratives on this subject, because here's what's happening. Number one, I've authorized the 2 firefighters for the fire department who will go in the academy in January. This is coming out of the $140,000 that's already in this budget. So it's no incremental expense this fiscal year. However, next year, or this year coming with the workshop sessions, there'll be a presentation on whatever the needs may be for next fiscal year. So in terms of this fiscal year, this current fiscal year, which ends June of 2019, the fire department has the authorization, based on the work the Board of Finance Subcommittee did, based on the final recommendation back to me, a hand-delivered report from the Fire Commission, asking for the 2 firefighters. They're going to get those 2 firefighters. That's already in this budget. Everything else from this point forward is going to be addressed in the workshop sessions in January and February. And that's it. That's what's happening.
Yes, but it's important, I think, to assure the public at this point that we're also right now considering equipment acquisition in the near future.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that at least the public should know that before this fiscal year is out, in the next couple months, we are likely to take action to increase the equipment level of the fire department.
That's an excellent point, and that is the one other thing. There could be one vehicle, the fire chief and I have already been discussing this, one vehicle that is on the verge of perhaps not passing inspection. What we will do, to Michael's point, is look during this fiscal year to make that purchase for the fire department. So beyond the 2 firefighters that I mentioned, which are in this current fiscal year budget, and beyond what Michael just said about the one vehicle that we may look to replace in this fiscal year, everything else is being handled in a workshop session for the next fiscal year. All the other requests. Yes.
But also, though, we did identify an immediate need that the fire department had with regard to personal protection equipment. And I believe that we've given the chief the okay to look to acquire some more
Yes.
sets of equipment in the current fiscal year.
Regarding what we just talked about?
Yes,
No.
Oh, yes,
no,
right.
regarding the volunteers.
PPE to volunteers.
Oh, the volunteers, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. So really, there's 3 things.
And there, right, and there are some no-cost issues that, again, are probably going to be addressed and that will improve the efficiency of the fire operations that are in our report. So our report is actionable and certainly is going to go to achieve some positive results in the very near future.
And we've stayed the course. We're still pursuing the PSA, so PSAR.
And the group was an interesting one that the first selectman put together. We weren't, even though it's referred to as, a subcommittee of the Board of Finance, it wasn't a subcommittee of the Board of Finance. They kind of referred it that way because 2 of the members were from the Board of Finance. Michael and I have different and similar perspectives on things, but I will say I think both of us have the best interests of town at heart. So it's a good pairing sometimes to work together. Using the town resources, that's why the suggestions basically came from the 2 of us and not anyone else. The other people in that room basically work for the town. We're the taxpayers that were in the room taking a look at it. But, yes, Pat?
Thank you. When might we know about the PSR outcome?
It's hard to say, Pat, because now it's, of course, in the hands of the attorneys. I'm going to anticipate that in the back half of this fiscal year, which concludes June 30th, we should have some answer on that, but it's hard to predict exactly when.
Okay, thank you.
If board members have nothing else, I'd like to go to public. Yes, Sherman.
Sherman Cash, Sherwood Drive. I only have 2 subjects. The parking lot that we're refurbishing out here, is there a deadline for that
Let me answer.
to be finished? Well, let me finish the rest of the question then. I'm under the assumption that there is a deadline for that, and if they exceed that deadline, there's a penalty of $800 a day that the contractor would have to pay, does that go to the state or does it go to North Haven? And do you have a mechanic set up to collect the $800?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
I'm not aware of that.
I'm not aware of the
I'll
aware of
collect
the deadline, so,
Okay, my source may be wrong then.
yeah. Well, we'll check that out, Sherman.
Yeah,
But,
please. And the other thing is the Quinnipiac pilot program. The dollars that come in from Quinnipiac, you call it part of the pilot program, correct?
Right,
Payment in lieu of taxes.
yes.
But not all those dollars go into the general fund.
No.
Why is it set up that they don't go into the general fund? Because when we get it from the state, it goes in the general fund.
Well, what we've tried to do, Sherman, is use some of the money for very important community projects, like Playscapes for Children, as an example, that have grant money is dried up for. There's no more steep grants to do that. That would eventually be capital expenditures in our budget or the Board of Ed budget. And, you know, I always felt, I've said it right from day one, that we have to have good parks, good playscapes, good places for children to play. And one of the most embarrassing things for a town is to have a playscape that's rusted or not ADA compliant, or our insurance companies say that, you know, you really shouldn't have children play on there. So we've chosen to use that money from Quinnipiac on these community projects. Now, this coming year, one of the things that Ed and I, when we met with all the captains of the volunteer firehouses with the chief, on what's the number one issue with volunteers in terms of either retention or attracting, the captains unanimously said lack of a training facility here. So I've already had discussions with Quinnipiac on next year's pilot, maybe to underwrite the cost of the training facility for our firefighters, both volunteer and paid, in the back of Northeast Firehouse.
I thought we had that settled about 2 years ago, that someone was going to build that
They
for us.
reneged on it, sure. They backed
So
out.
we're just up in the air on that. But then, my other question is, we decided, okay, there are some we people, that I don't know who the we people are. I still feel that that should go into the general fund and be a line item in the budget so that it can be decided on by the people where the dollar should go, which will probably go where the we people want it. But the people should have the opportunity to make a decision on it. And that's all I have to say tonight.
Okay, all right, very good. Thanks, Sherman. Thank you.
Sally?
Happy holidays, Mr. Chairman, and everybody else. Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive. I think to Mr. Katz's point about pilot versus Quinnipiac, I think it's a mistake to call the money that comes from Quinnipiac pilot money, because pilot is really from the state. It's budgeted in our budget book as from the state, and it's mandated by the state, administered by the Department of Administrative Services, and they have a very complex formula by which they give us payments in lieu of taxes for Quinnipiac, for Yale, the property Yale has on Divine Street, and for the state property at Gateway. Those are our 3 sources of pilot money. Correct, Mr.
Yes.
Swinkowski? Yeah. So that's really pilot money per state statute. We should call the money from Quinnipiac, which might help alleviate your concern about where it goes, we should call it a voluntary contribution. And yes, according to the memorandum of understanding, which we never had signed, but we had one, they calculate the voluntary payment, they being Quinnipiac, based on a percentage of the pilot money attributed to their property. So that's really the only connection with pilot. It's not really pilot money. Pilot comes from the state, and in our budget book, the pilot money is a revenue line item on page 7 of the budget book under State of Connecticut Town, whereas the Quinnipiac contribution is under general revenue. So they are separate. So it's a mistake, I think, to call Quinnipiac pilot money. It's not really. So if they give a voluntary payment, they could put strings on it and say, we want it to go toward, I think, didn't one of their
I'm
payments?
sure they would like to see most of it go where it's very noticeable to the public.
Yes, like the softball, the girls' softball facility,
Exactly.
you know, and stuff like that. So I think we should call it a voluntary contribution, which is really what it is, and call the pilot money. what it is, which is the state mandated pilot, which I'm very surprised, speaking of pilot, it's almost, we've received almost double what we budgeted for, according to the revenue report, right?
And,
Pilot, the real pilot money from the state.
yeah, that's, yeah, no, that did come in.
It's 666,000 and we budgeted 341. Right? Am I reading that right on the page 1 of the revenue report?
Yes, you are.
State
Yep.
of Connecticut
Well, that was based on the
pilot.
last report I got from the state, so that's the figure we budgeted.
Right, I understand that, but
Yeah, it did
we've
come out much
received
higher.
666,000.
Correct.
First of all, we received it earlier than usual, I think, and that's the highest number in a couple of years.
Yes.
What's going on with that?
I don't know.
Well, I
That's not a mistake.
think,
A lot of
I
good
can tell you
jams.
what's going on. You know, when you look at Quinnipiac expanding and the,
Yes,
and the
true.
value goes up of the property, the state pilot goes up, even though the percentages may be the same, that the value of the university in
Right.
terms of assessed value, when that rises, pilot goes up. And it's
Right.
the same thing, Sally, with what we've done here with the medical center, with all these new buildings there, that, we're either getting taxes for those or those that Yale is expanding. They're putting more and more in, so we get more
Right.
pilot based on the values.
Right.
That's what happens.
Yep. And just a couple of, so I didn't come to the microphone intending to talk about pilot, but Mr. Katz had brought it up in his question, so I just think we should call it a voluntary contribution. But what I really wanted to talk about is the fire department, very, very quickly. You said that you've authorized hiring 2 new people, and so they will be working just half year, if you're looking at the fiscal year. correct?
Actually, I think just under half.
On just a little under half. So
Yeah.
the 140, if you take into account benefits, because it's not just,
Yep.
the 140 would be enough, because normally
That's
2
right.
new firefighters would be, to a
280,
year,
280.
would be 280.
or
I just
two-
want to make that clear, so,
260, right?
I'm sorry?
That'd probably be 120 a person.
Right. But you're right, though,
So-
Sally.
Yeah.
No,
So,
1/3, maybe
so
1/3.
yes, we're hiring, you're saying that it's covered already by the line item of 140?
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes, for this fiscal year, but I
Right.
assume they're going to be working next year too.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it will go to the 240. Do we know how those 2 firefighters are going to be allocated as far as shift
Fire
allocation?
commissions, their jurisdiction.
Right.
Yeah,
They have our suggestion,
yes, they do. Well,
So
okay.
I
which
think,
I think was your suggestion also.
Yes, it was, and I think it's a good one for.
Get me nervous when we start thinking like,
Uh-oh, uh-oh.
that suggestion is rejected, by the way, so.
Yeah.
They're coming back with a plan, and I know what the plan, I think.
Yeah,
is
they're going to
be.
put one on shift A and one on shift B, and so
so-
then we're going to have no choice but to hire 2 more to make the shifts equal. That's what they're doing. So they're going to allocate these 2 firefighters in a way that leaves us no choice but to hire 2 more. Rather than put them Monday through Friday during the workday, when the bulk of the, not all, but the bulk of the contemporaneous calls come in, when people are in town working and Divine Street is open. Divine Street medical facility is very draining on the emergency medical services here in North Haven. They're closed at night and on weekends, along with many medical facilities, which also drain. So I think it's a mistake. I think that if we do have limited resources, the best place to allocate them is where the needs are greatest. And that's why I advocated for the weighted day duty, but I know they reject it because they want more people. So one other question, I grabbed the wrong folder when I came here, as you know. So I left my list of 30 proposals at home, but one of them is to replace engine 1 and to reassign it somewhere.
yeah, there's 2 engines that are
But isn't-
25-year
is it-
plus engines.
But engine 1 is kind of new.
It's
the red one.
6 years,
Yeah,
6 years.
so engine 1 gets
5
to
years old.
replace the 25-year-old one in one of the other houses.
Oh, okay.
The
Oh, yeah,
current
but just be
engine.
moving it to a different house.
Yeah.
and
So
that
engine
25
1 has got to be less than 5 years, because I remember the town
4
meeting.
years, 4 or 5.
Because I've
4
only
years.
been on the
4
board
years
for
old.
5 years.
4 years old.
4, okay. So is there anything wrong with it?
I mean, it's had some maintenance to it, but
It blew a head gasket, so that was repaired. And the chief's plan would include, just like Michael said, as we replace these vehicles, to move it to maybe a volunteer house to
Yes.
reduce the
Right.
reduce the load on it, if you will, reduce the
Okay.
mileage on it.
Okay.
The other thing to keep in mind, and it was funny, it was a friend of mine that was actually a volunteer said this. You'd like to keep, for a volunteer to say it too, you'd like to keep the newest engine at the main station. It's the most amount of use while it's under warranty.
Yep, I agree with that.
Right.
Okay. I just heard there was trouble with it, but it must have been the gasket.
It was the head gasket.
Okay.
That's what it was.
Well, that's big trouble. I'm no mechanic, but anyway. Okay, so they're going to hire two. I just wanted to respond very quickly. I mean, last month we were somewhat restricted in our comments because, Mr. Chairman, you wanted to wait until the Fire Commission had
Fire
their
Commission.
chance, and I watched the
That was
Fire...
fair.
Yes, it was very fair, and I watched the Fire Commission meeting, and I watched it actually 3 times. And I just wanted to respond really quickly to a couple of things. Mr. Marino spoke during public comment. He's the union president. He questioned the legality of the meeting, the subcommittee. I just think, in my opinion, it was very legal and appropriate for the first selectman to have such a committee. So last month, to my surprise, I heard, the first selectman voiced his concern that maybe it wasn't a good idea to have formed the committee, and I was surprised by his articulated self-doubt. I would say that not only was it a good idea, but sound and prudent administration, and also a practical way to proceed with efficient policymaking. So I saw nothing illegal about forming the committee and thought that it was quite proper. So I wanted to respond to that particular comment because I saw it as a criticism of you forming this little group or committee in the first place.
Yeah, so let me comment on that. So what you saw at the Fire Commission meeting, I ended up meeting with the union, with Brian Marino, after the Fire Commission meeting. And I explained to him that the reason that the committee was in place, that was the only way we can get the $140,000 authorized in the budget. So that we could not have had a committee, but there wouldn't have been $140,000. So the good news is the fact that the $140,000 was in the budget had to be tied into a committee to do the evaluation. Now, you're right, I did say that last week, and here's why, or last month. Because what was happening was that inadvertently, the committee was engaging in policy that's the Fire Commission responsibility. And we can't have that in government, whether it's a police commission or fire commission, that they're responsible for policy, working in conjunction with the chiefs and the administration. Through the great efforts of this committee and the fact that they were really engaged, that the fire commission was looking at it saying that this is kind of our responsibility to develop the policy. That's why at the last Board of Finance meeting I said, in retrospect, maybe I shouldn't have done this. But what we did say at the last meeting last month was that the Board of Finance Subcommittee's recommendation will go to the Fire Commission for review, and the Fire Commission will make the recommendation back to me.
Right.
And that's how it ended up.
Right, and even though it certainly is the Fire Commission's jurisdiction, I think incumbent upon the Board of Finance is an obligation to, if any, for lack of a better word, educate itself on issues. And that's really what this subcommittee did. So I don't see it really as overstepping that policy line. It was just, I don't see anything wrong with the Board of Finance trying to, undertake some sort of research project and educate themselves, because yes, the Fire Commission controls the fire department, the police commission, police department, et cetera, but you guys control the checkbook, and you guys decide how much money they get to implement what they want to implement. So really, the buck really stops here. And so I just wanted to say that I thought that charge of illegality was out of line, and I found it to be quite legal and quite prudent administratively. So that's what I wanted to say. So don't doubt yourself,
Okay.
Mr. First Selectman. Also, I just want to clarify one thing about the population of North Haven 40 years ago. It was not 5,000, and we were not a farm town. it was 22,000 40 years ago, and I grew up in this town, and I never saw a tractor, so, that was said as quote, "This is not the 5,000-person farm town that it was 40 years ago." Well, 48 years ago, there were 22,400 people in town, and I never saw a tractor. And we had actually cars that operated with internal combustion engines up and down Washington Avenue. We had computers and everything. So I just wanted to put that in there. So let's see what happens this budget season. Stop laughing, Mr. First Selectman. You understand where I'm coming from. Now, the prediction that we will have 30,000 in the 2020 census, I don't go with that either. Maybe 25. I think we might go up to 25,000. But, I'm sorry?
No, I was just telling them, we've been putting an audit report together, and we keep looking back. All the reports say we're between 23 and 24,000 for the past 10 years.
Right.
Population hasn't varied that much.
Well, it hasn't changed since it was 22,000 in 1970. So it
Right.
hasn't changed much in 50 years. And and like I said, you'd have to go back, I believe, 80 years to get to 5,000 population. I just wanted to throw that out there as a lifelong resident and historian. I found that a shocking statement to make. Others also, but I'm not going to address those. We'll just go forward with our new budgetary season and see what you guys decide to do. I'll be very anxious to attend the fire department's workshop. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Sally. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. White?
Mary White, Summer Lane. So I wanted to start off by saying that I was glad that the committee was formed and that a report was generated, because I think it brought to light the issues with the need for more paramedics, more firefighters, and more apparatus that I've been talking about for over a year. So I think it sparked a conversation, and I think that good things are going to come from it. So I'm glad it was formed and the money was set aside. And so anyway, so I wanted to just make a comment about what Sally had just said about the reason why they rejected the weighted day duty was because they want to hire more firefighters. That's not what I heard. I heard they rejected it because there's no peak demand, but primarily because it's a violation of the firefighter labor union contract. And the union, they would have to vote on that, and they would not vote to approve that ever. That's not the way that they are assigned. We already know how they are assigned. 24 hours on, 8 men on the shift, and 72 hours off. And there's 4 of those. Okay. So I'd like to say next is that I'm glad, Mike, that you authorized the 2 firefighters and utilizing that 140,000, and and I'm glad about the purchase of a vehicle. Does it happen to be ladder truck number 2? Do you know?
The chief's going to make that
Oh, okay.
recommendation. And the way it would work, Mary, potentially, is that this Board of Finance would make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, myself, Bill Piper, Sally Buemi, to call a town meeting, to have a town meeting vote on appropriating the expenditure through the fund balance.
Okay. The chief had talked about him having he had this idea of purchasing a ladder truck from down south.
Yes.
And you can save a lot of money.
Right.
And he said it's going to serve our purposes as far as being, outfitted and everything, and he can save, a lot of money going that route.
He
So,
did say that.
Just
and
kind of
that's-
curious. Well, I guess.
That would probably end up to be his recommendation, but we'll know more about that, Ed and I, later in the week. But I think that's the way it'll probably go.
Okay. And I'm also glad about the PPE that you authorized the chief to purchase for the volunteers, because as we know about the fire on November 24th, that fire was stopped, and heroic efforts, and they prevented the drinking water from being contaminated and neighborhoods from not having to be evacuated. And there were, some people may not be aware of it, but there were acids and corrosives in liquid form on the floor where the firefighters were. And the acids and corrosive were also in gas form in the smoke escaping through the hole in the roof. So that personal protection equipment was contaminated and destroyed. So, and they need that. So I'm glad that that's being taken care of. Next, I'd like to mention to you guys that I emailed a letter to the Police Chief McLaughlin and the Board of Police Commissioners, and I attached the final North Haven Fire and Medical Services Workshop group recommendations. I asked them to please look and discuss proposal number 2, which is emergency dispatch, and the recommendations to improve calls to the switchboard and the hiring of 4 additional dispatchers, among other recommendations. And I asked them to discuss A through F.
We've already had those meetings with them.
Oh, you did?
That's where
Okay.
the recommendations came from.
Okay, all right.
So you'll see that in the PD workshop session about the
Okay,
dispatchers,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, because I wasn't sure if he had actually
We had
received the
chief, we had
report.
the deputy chief, and we had their captain involved with all
Right.
dispatch.
Right.
Okay, and so you gave them the report.
We discussed this entire
They were
need for
part
dispatch.
of gathering the research and the data.
Exactly.
Yes,
So
but
they're
I'm,
aware of exactly where we were coming from.
exactly.
The
I just
dispatch
wanted
report will
to,
be discussed with them
Yeah,
in the,
part of
in the
budget
police
workshop, please,
workshop.
yes. I just wanted to make sure that they actually had it in their hands. I kind of figured that they were part of the,
We're all
the data
inclusive.
research, yeah. So anyway, so they have it, and if they have it twice, all the better. Next, I'd like to say, at the 11/27 Fire Commission meeting, once again, the fire chief reported an increase in alarms. There are 225 more alarms than this time last year, 482 more alarms than this time 5 years ago. They provided ALS intercept transport to the hospital, where our paramedic rode in the ambulance 23 times. There are 432 alarms since their last meeting. 102 overlapping simultaneous alarms occurred. 19 times the fire department responded to the highway. 68% of the calls were EMS related. 3 alarms did not have or did not receive fire department response because no fire department apparatus were available. AMR did respond. So as we can see, these statistics continue to show the need for more personnel, more apparatus, and more paramedics are needed. The chief also mentioned about they are nearing 5,000 alarms. They're almost there. He said last time that the department was at 5,000, there was a concern enough where there was an effort made to remove responding to 800 different alarms. And now he said they're back up to 5,000. Okay. Okay. Next, I'd like to say that both the North Haven Fire Medical Services Workshop group recommendations and the response report from the Fire Commission are both posted on the town's website, right on the front page there. And the last item I have is a question. Do we have confirmation if the budget workshops will be televised live?
They usually always are. Oh, I don't know if they're live. They're always televised, though.
Well, I know televised, but we're looking for live.
You have to talk to Walter Mann,
You know,
North Haven TV.
we have now, let's see, the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, a lot of these meetings are
It may
live.
be able to be live because it's in this room.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm totally on board with it. I'm only hesitating because.
They may have a
the
schedule.
Schedule, and it's a Saturday, some of these workshop sessions, and their staffing also. But we'll work towards trying to achieve that, because I think it's consistent with what we're doing here anyway, so.
Okay, all right, thank
Okay,
you.
Very good.
The ones that precede our regular meeting would probably be live.
Yes, those would be live, yes.
Yeah, so it's just the Saturday sessions.
The Saturday sessions is what I was hesitating on, Mary.
I think it is.
Oh, this is live, too?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You are live.
Hopefully
Anyone
they're-
else?
Hopefully they're on a 7-second delay.
Seeing none, have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's a damn good idea.